What's up, y'all? That was a tune called The Butterfly. It's a slip jig, it's a great standard session tune, and it's one that I recorded about 10 years ago. Right about there. Right there. That's me. About 10 years ago. Old video. And I thought it would be kind of cool to go back and run through some of these old ones that I did so long ago, and somebody specifically referenced this one, saying, why don't you remake it with the new camera and better audio and hopefully a little bit better skill after a decade of playing it. So that's what we're doing now. We're going to break down the basic melody, go through some of the ornaments. I'll talk to you about kind of the ways that I like to play it, and see if you want to work that into the way that you play it. So as always, we're going to start with the basic melody, and now it's a slip jig, so if you're not too familiar with slip jigs, this is a good one to start with. It's a great beginner tune. Pro tip, 9/8, so it's 3 sets of 3, basically. That's how I like to think of it. So here's the 8 part. This is a 3-part tune, so that's kind of why I'm playing the whole thing all at once. So save a little bit of time, but I'll run that again just so you get that. So, the B part jumps all the way up to the high B. This is one of those tunes that you're working on in a room full of sleeping people. That's probably best to drop the octave so you don't drive them all crazy. Right? Do that one more time. The third part stays fairly low and mellow again, and it's got some cool opportunities for rolls, which we'll get to in a minute. But here's the basic melody of the C part. Run that again. You'll notice we're spending a lot of time on that first octave B. Be thinking about what you might want to do with that, because that's kind of a good spot to ornament here. So once more. So that's the whole thing. Ready to have some fun with it? Let's work in some ornaments now. This tune has a tendency to get very lilty, and not in a great way. It's considered a beginner tune at this point. Not to say that it's a bad tune or one that shouldn't be played. In fact, it's not. It's a fantastic tune, but it does tend to get a little loping. So and people tend to accent those. Tend to do that. In the beginning, when you're just kind of getting the hang of things, trying to get that groove down, nothing inherently wrong with that, I would strive to move away from that. Kind of take on some of that cool groove that it does actually have in there. So, something like this. Changing up some of those accents, right? You can do that a lot of ways. You can do that through variation, which I'm not going to dive into too much on this, just hopefully you'll be able to get some of that from the way I played it in the beginning. But through ornamentation, you can break up that rhythm and kind of accent some offbeats, accent some things that are a little bit surprising, which is what I always like to do. So, in the A part, we have, again, basic melody. That first section. You can do short rolls on those bottom two notes. I like to do that. A lot of people will slide that first one. Sounds kind of cool. You could do short rolls on all three of them. A couple of different choices. Or long rolls. One of the reasons why I like this tune is because there are a lot of choices, a lot of ways you can mix it up, and I would definitely suggest experimenting with that, but hopefully that'll give you a few choices. And then it repeats again. That little walk down thing, A, F sharp, E, D, don't necessarily have to accent, but this is one of those times where you can make an unusual accent choice. As you're going from the F sharp to the E, popping that F sharp finger off. That's what I like to do. That's kind of a thing that I use a lot. And it's got to be quick. It's got to be one of those things you do hit fairly quickly, but it has just a real subtle accent on an unusual beat, which is why I kind of like it. So that bit repeats again from the beginning of it. To finish the phrase, sliding from the A to the B, that's one option. You can also do a short roll, but a slide works well for me. I think it's kind of a more subtle choice. That's your basic melody. So a couple of things there. A cran on the D. And it has to be fairly quick because the goal of that ornament there is just to really punch that high D. And then as I'm coming down, I do the same kind of popping thing that I demonstrated just a second ago on the F sharp to the E. You do the same thing B to A. So as you're coming down, and I do the same kind of a pop thing going from the F sharp to the D in this case. As you land on the D, popping that F sharp finger off. And it just has the effect of accenting those, unusual choice notes. Now, since the B part does jump up to that really high B and spends a fair bit of time in the higher octave, you might have to be a little bit more selective about your ornaments, particularly depending on the whistle that you're playing, because sometimes adding in extra ornaments will cause those notes to break. So you just got to be aware of that, just something to keep in mind. But I tend to do short rolls on both of those, a slide from the A to the B in the beginning. I seem to be using a lot of short rolls with this tune. Don't have to. You could just do slides or cuts. You can keep it a lot more simple if you want, and I think it'll still work. Not a lot of ornamentation that way. Or now, as I'm going from the G to the E, it's the same popping thing I keep doing. So in this case, as I go from F sharp go from G to E, pop that F sharp finger off. Now going up to that high B, that's one which, depending on the whistle, you might run the risk of cracking those notes. So it's just something to be aware of. Now you can do a slide. See, I cracked it there too. Yeah. So of the 3 times I did it, I think I got it right once. Yeah, you may be better off with a slide there. And again, G to the E, still popping that transition there as I land on the E. And that one's a nice one because it's subtle. Oh, as you hit that high note, you could slide up to it and then do a quick cut just to kind of separate the two notes, the two high Bs, and kind of accent that. And just kind of stretching at that phrase a little bit longer than it would be if you were just writing it on paper. Now the C part, again, I mentioned in the beginning, sitting on that B for a while. Like 70% of that phrase is just on one note. That's a regular roll, full roll, a short roll, then the other melody notes, then another short roll again. That's one option. That little bubbly thing, I did a whole video on that, which put a link up here, over here, there, I don't know, wherever that goes. We'll fix it in post. It goes like this. And if you do it quickly, if you add in the tonguing in there, it gives it a bit more punch. So that's how you could start the phrase, one of the B options that you could play. And then otherwise, we're just throwing in a couple of short rolls. Right? So you're really only bouncing between 3 notes there for most of that phrase. So you have to get a little creative and mix it up. And those are a couple of options. And the other option there is hold the note. There's nothing wrong with that. When you hold a note like that, especially in a tune that's expected to be rolls and there's been a lot of motion, it's kind of a nice tension and release kind of thing. We've had all this movement and all these ornaments. Sometimes it's nice just to go, and then you carry right back into the ornamented part of the tune. Now, again, just like I demonstrated before, we're going in that same popping thing, B to the E, B to the A. Right? Same thing as we did before on the F sharp to the E, same transition. That's what I like to do with it. Thanks for reminding me of this video that I haven't looked at in about a decade. So hopefully it was worth something to revisit and bring up again, because it's a great tune and it's a cool session tune and it's a good one to get. And especially if you're new to slip jigs, this is a pretty cool one to start with. Let me know what you think. Otherwise, see you guys in the next one. Cheers.